Good morning, everyone. My name is Federico Costantini, and I come from the University of Udine in the same region of Trieste, which is where ESOF 2020 is held. It is my honor today to present this session entitled Incorporating Users in the Deployment of Autonomous Vehicles. I'm here on behalf of the Cost Action WISE Act, which is aimed at analyzing social and economical impacts of AVS. First of all, I would like to thank ESOF 2020 organizers, not only for allowing us to be here today, but also for having decided to keep alive this event, even in these strange times, and an example of resiliency of the scientific community. I am personally deeply grateful for this. Secondly, it is my duty in my role as a moderator to introduce briefly the purpose of this session, its structure and its content. The presentation is divided into few sections which can be introduced by simple questions. What are autonomous vehicles? What is WISE Act? What is Cost Action? And what is this ESOF session about? First of all, I would like to share the screen with you, and in order to show my presentation. Okay, I hope this works. Is it working? My system says that I'm okay, perfect. What I'm going to do now is simply to, there's something not working. Oh, if you see below to the title, there is a bit.ly. As a preliminary advice of huge importance, I'd ask everyone to open another window or tab into the browser of the device and type this bit.ly into the URL. It is a link to a kind of questionnaire that we intend to propose you during this session, and do not start responding now, because you will be asked to do it in a proper time. So now I'm starting my short presentations. As you can maybe know, autonomous vehicles are vehicles which are capable of sensing their environment and navigating without human control. They adopt different disruptive technologies combined, artificial intelligence, 5G, and distributive ledger systems. And there are many advantages, of course, for example, less human incidents, but there are also many uncertainties. So, for example, how transport system will be modified, how our society will be affected, and how our cities will be changed. WISE Act is devoted to deepen and analyze these issues. Is a cost action, and it involves a group of 150 experts from 41 worldwide countries and many disciplines. The aims of WISE Act is to investigate this phenomenon, to share know-how across diverse localities in Europe and beyond, and to assess user acceptability. As an output of this action, we have published a volume we have a survey which is still ongoing, and we have a sustainability issue which will be published in a few months. Cost Action, as maybe some of you will know, is a founding organization of creating a research network across Europe. It's a bottom-up structure and covers basically collaboration activities. The Cost Associations is emphasizing the inclusiveness of research, so there are many countries at an international level which take part on this. What is not about this session? It is not about rhetorical and futile at this moment, at this stage of technology questions as the trolley problem or the moral machine. In this session, we'll prefer to deepen the real problems that can tackle our society. So this session is about a short appraisal of our research, is introducing the technological issues and presenting transport policy issues and discussing public transport challenges from a twofold perspective, the user one and the mobile or transport operator one. The layout of the session is as follows. In the first part, it is divided basically in 4 parts. The first part deals with an introduction of economy and technology. The second part is about transport policy. The third part is about public transport, and in the fourth part we will accept questions and we will try to answer. The first part will be held by Wolfram Krár and Jaka Sodnik. The second part will be held by Fabio Steibel. The third part, we will have a discussion between Cristina Pronello and Franco Stivali. And so at the end of each section, we will have a short polling, 2 or 3 short answers should be given. So at the end, you can post your questions in the chat. I will try to organize the discussion. At the first session is starting, I would like to introduce Wolfram Krár, who works for Austratech, which is a public agency in Austria, and Jaka Sodnik, who works at the University of Ljubljana as an electric engineer. Both are involved in many projects, so I'm eager to hear what they have to say, and I thank them for being here today, even virtually, and I leave the floor to Wolfram Krár. Thank you very much by now.
Yes, hello, this is Wolfram Krár speaking. Federico, thank you for your introduction, and I hope everybody's fine to hear me, and you should see the correct screen right now. I was given the honor or the duty, whatever you want to call it, to give a short introduction into the topic of automated vehicles. And since the time is very limited, please apologize if this introduction will be pretty brief and only focusing on some of the elements. One of the most raised questions I was facing in the past was the question, when will automated vehicles be on the road? The answer is pretty easy. That depends. Federico already mentioned that an automated vehicle is defined as a vehicle without human control. But what does it mean? It means the vehicle is able to reach any potential destination on its own, and that it's able to handle all situations such as bad weather, changes to the road layout, other road users, and also their unforeseeable behavior and so on. So having such vehicles available, which are able to fulfill these criteria pretty well, will take some time. But in the meantime, the development is still interesting to get to this point. And therefore, I suggest have a common understanding on the variety of automated vehicles. So let's have a brief view on this commonly accepted levels of automation called the SAE levels. There's this level 0, which means there's no automation at all in the vehicle. Levels 1 and 2 mean that one or more systems or features in the vehicle to support the driver, and they are usually called ADAS systems, which means Advanced Driver Assisting Systems. What's common for these two levels is that the driver will always be responsible for the vehicle and its movements. Level 3 and 4 mean that a vehicle is able to drive on its own, at least for some section, as long as the vehicle feels comfortable with the situation. Where are the differences? On level 3, it could happen that the vehicle discovers a situation which is not able to handle, and then in such a case, the vehicle will give back the responsibility to the driver. What's important here is that can be done within a few seconds. So the driver should better not sleep or whatever doing and not be able to take over the responsibility immediately. Level 4 is quite similar to that, but in this case, the vehicle will be able to stop at the safe place. And then it becomes interesting for the driver because it means the driver would be able to do whatever he wants because there's no need to take over immediately. And after, the vehicle will be able to stop the vehicle in a safe place. And then the driver could decide either to continue on his own, to take over the steering, or to wait until the situation becomes better, easier, whatever, and then the vehicle could continue. Level 5 means that only at that level, the vehicle will be able to handle all the situations, and therefore, technical-wise, there will be no need anymore for a steering wheel within the vehicle. So just a brief wrap-up of the technology. The first vehicles which had such an ADAS system in, even if it wasn't called that way, was in the 1950s. It's more than 60 years ago. It was a cruise control which was implemented there. And since this time, there have been a continuous development. The actual vehicles usually have several of these functions implemented. Just to mention a few, it's ABS, a park pilot, a lane keep assistant, brake assistant, whatever you want to have there. And now we are, at the threshold to where level 3 vehicles are coming into the market, and therefore it's an interesting time because the vehicles and the system will be changing. So, yes, there will be the situation that such vehicles will be driving on their own and have the responsibility for at least a certain section of the road, and it will not be the person inside who is responsible, at least for a special time frame. So, just for this session or for today, automated vehicles to be considered as self-driving cars on level 3 or other 4 and 5. So what are we going to expect? Yes, automated vehicles will start to be part of our transportation system and therefore also of our life. But for quite a long time, we will have a mix of road users with different automation levels, which means vehicles from SAE level 0 to SAE level 5. But also, don't forget them, the pedestrians and cyclists, which are quite often being left out of all the considerations. The challenges of automated vehicles will not only be to improve their abilities and handle more and more complex situations so that time frame will be longer and longer where the vehicles feel comfortable with the situation, but also the challenges will be that they need to be accepted and even appreciated by the people. And the challenge might not be those persons who are inside the vehicles and have spent a lot of money for having these vehicles, but even more those persons who just happen to be around these automated vehicles, and they are not so much used to the vehicles and the new technology, but also they are part of the transportation system and need to be considered as well. So about the usage of automated vehicles. Automated vehicles will not be cheap because there's a lot of technology in, and that's costing some money. But it's commonly expected that there will be a change of ownership based on this additional costs for the vehicles. And therefore, still, whenever automated vehicles will be available, still people will own their own vehicles. But some will try and will start, even more than today, share the vehicles in a kind of car sharing. Also ride sharing, where you're sharing the same ride with other people, would be there and would be coming more strongly. But don't forget that automation of vehicles will also open up new forms of public transport based on these vehicles. And still, a lot of people will still walk and ride their bikes. But most of the people will use a mix of these options, and therefore we have to expect a rather complex mobility system. And so, rather than being a fancy new feature, AVs have the potential to enable new mobility options. And to give you an overview of some of the effects, for sure, that's not a complete list. So people will need to learn to cope with such vehicles. I'm talking about the drivers or passengers, depending who is responsible at a certain time, but also and especially those people who are outside the vehicles, just the other road users. There will be also effect on professional drivers. They will face changes to their job specifications and requirements. But since this will be a transition process, and for the moment, for example, there's an actual shortage of truck drivers, the immediate impact of on the professional drivers will be rather moderate. On the other hand, for example, cities will need to consider the new transportation systems. Part of this transportation system they have under their control, as long as they're willing to take this control. But another part of this transportation system will not be under their direct control, or not that easily to be brought under their control. So there are a lot of decisions will need to be taken by the cities and the responsibilities on government on different levels. So who drives? Not vehicle, but introduction of automation. So far, the development and introduction of automated vehicles is mainly being driven by the automotive industry. I mean, that's clear. They want to sell the vehicles and they use the more and more fancy ADAS functions as a USP, why their vehicles should be better than those of the others. But AVs, such as other vehicles, are using roads, and these roads are usually owned by the government. So the public road operators are building and maintaining these roads. And it becomes more and more obvious that an automated vehicle can definitely benefit a lot from the communication between the vehicles, but also by getting information from the digital infrastructure alongside the road. Therefore, in the future, automated vehicles will usually not be only on their own, but they usually will be connected with the world around them. So this means there will be an automated system consisting of different participants on the road, the roadside, in the background, and a lot of communication to bring the required information to the right places, which means that road operators, communication industry, content providers, and so on will be as important as the car maker. So for me, the brief conclusion is the introduction of automated vehicles is a big chance, but it requires a certain control and policy on different levels in order to benefit from the advantages and to avoid the disadvantages of the introduction of automated vehicles. Thank you so far.
Thank you, Wolfram. Thank you for being here. And now I leave the virtual floor to Jaka Sotnik. The floor is yours.
Good. Hi, everyone. I'd also like to welcome you all to this session on autonomous vehicles. So in the next 10 minutes, I'm going to explain a little bit what are the technological challenges of automated driving. As we saw also in the previous presentation, this will be a big challenge for everybody, not just for car makers. And let's try to see what are these challenges that we're talking about. So as human drivers, to cope with the environment, we have different senses. We have vision, we have hearing system, we have the feeling of touch, the tactile feedback, and so on. And when we're talking about autonomous vehicles, we have to substitute these senses with so-called technological sensors. The most important sensors on autonomous vehicles are listed here. So one of them, LiDAR, which is sort of a laser technology, which scans the environments and provides a highly accurate 3D image of the environment to autonomous vehicles. So based on that, it's enabled to identify different objects, different shape of objects, and so on. So LiDAR is usually supported by a set of cameras. The cameras provide additional information about the environments and again, provide the system with the information on what is going on around the vehicle, for example. So the next vital technology are radars of different ranges. We're talking about long-range radars, mid-range, short-range, and so on. It's important for the radars, which uses electromagnetic technology, to be able to detect these objects, the velocity of objects, if this object could interact with the vehicle, and so on. And nevertheless, the vehicle needs to know where is it located in the world. So the positioning, such as GPS, accompanied with high-definition maps, it's also a very important piece of technology for the self-driving car to be able to drive around and, as I said, to locate itself mainly. The second part, which you also heard a little bit about in the previous presentation, is communication. So self-driving cars will have to interact with each other. So they will communicate one vehicle to another. They will communicate to the infrastructure and also to other traffic participants, such as different traffic signals, traffic signs, and so on. In order to support this communication, new equipment will be installed on boards of these vehicles and also on the infrastructure. So the 5G, that's a very hot topic lately in Europe and also in the world. It will be the vital technology for these vehicles because it enables fast enough communication and also in terms of delays and so on. So it will be crucial. It's just the next level of cell phone technology, but as said, it will be a vital technology here. So by sensing so much about the environment with the sensors that I mentioned before, of course, enormous amounts of data will be generated. This data will be processed on boards of these vehicles, but it will also be communicated with other vehicles, with infrastructure and so on. By exchanging all this data through all these interfaces, of course, there are many new vulnerabilities that will come up. So let's say our autonomous vehicle, for example, with all this wireless network, it will be a new polygon or a new framework also for cybersecurity hackers, for example. So they will be able to hijack or to attack such a car and do some bad things with it, of course. So just like computers today, they are all connected to the internet and therefore exposed to these cybersecurity attacks. Again, we're going to face the same problem also here. You can imagine a hacker who somehow jeopardized and access the entire fleet of autonomous vehicles through the operator. Of course, this could be quite dangerous situations, and therefore cybersecurity is big and important issue here to provide safety. And then control. So as I said before, we are substituting human senses, but we're also substituting human brain, which proved to be throughout the history a really good and powerful decision-making problem or organ or a tool. Now in these days, we have to substitute it with software. That means that car manufacturers or people who are more focused on software, they said that probably more lines of code will be written for self-driving cars than for any other software platform so far. So in order to run this software, to run all this source code, enormous processing power will be required. So new central processing units, new GPU units will be installed on boards of these vehicles and also on the backend system to support all this processing. So we've heard also about artificial intelligence and machine learning. Artificial intelligence itself, it's quite an old term already. It's been around for more than 60 years, basically. but it never has such a nice polygon and so much data available than in case of autonomous vehicles. So this is, we can expect tremendous improvements also in artificial intelligence to go along with introduction of self-driving cars. I would specifically like to emphasize the word learning, because just as a human drive, for example, when you start driving, when you're in the age of 18 or 20, you're getting better and better driving because you learn. You learn from older drivers, from more experienced drivers, and you learn from your own experience. In this case, the self-driving car, it will also be impossible to program it entirely for its entire lifetime. So it will have to learn, it will have to adapt new methods, new algorithms, and so on. And that's why machine learning, for example, is important to enable the technology to learn on the go and to basically learn nonstop. And nevertheless, even if we're talking about if we're talking about technology, we have to also talk a little bit about the human. Because as we know, whenever technology and a user or a human interact, usually human is a very big link in this interaction, and the human error, for example. So it will be impossible to just switch off manual transport and just switch to autonomous vehicles. So they will have to coexist for quite some time. And that's why autonomous and automated vehicles, they will need to learn how to cope with human drivers and how to share the traffic, how to share the environments. And also other traffic participants, such as pedestrians, cyclists, scooters, they will be around for many years. And again, automated vehicles will need to first recognize this type of traffic participants, to try to learn about their intentions, their maybe safety critical interactions, and so on. So this will also be important. And nevertheless, if we talk about a self-driving car, there will still be a human inside, and the human will need to know what is going on. So this self-driving car will need to somehow transfer this knowledge or this information to human, in order for the human to trust the technology and to even start using it on the first place. So this is very important to know what is going on with the vehicle. Is the vehicle aware of the environment, even if it's raining or snowing outside? So this is also very important. And again, if we talk about traffic, we probably all know that driving in US, it's completely different from driving in India, for example, in Mumbai, or even driving in Rome, for example. For me as a Slovenian driver, even just going to Rome, which is not that far away, it's quite a big difference. And I have to adapt to this traffic specifics, to cultural specifics, and so on. And it will be the same with self-driving cars. They will have to, their software will need to be upgraded. It will need to be adjusted to be able to cope with these differences. So this is also quite a challenge. And in the last presentation, we hear a nice overview of so-called SAE levels. So this is engineering point of view, how engineers see different levels of automation. I'm not going to repeat it again, but I would just like to stress out the level 3 and level 4. So this is so-called partial automation, when there is some kind of exchange of control between a human and a vehicle. So in level 3, as Wolfram said, so the driver at some point could take the hands off the steering wheel and leave the car to drive on its own. But when there will be a critical situations, there will be just a couple of seconds when the human will have to take over back the control. And this is very, very safety critical moment, because the car will need to know if human is able to do that. Is it mentally prepared? Is it physically prepared? So this is very, very uncertain and a very critical situation, for example. So again, this human-machine interaction and the interfaces to provide this exchange of control, this will be of vital importance. How prepare the human to take the control, and even how to not allow the human to completely disengage. So to be engaged in the driver, even if it's not actively driving. So I'd like to finish my presentation with this challenge. and give the word back to Federico. So thank you very much.
Very much, Jaka. Now we can start the first polling. You can connect to the URL that I previously provided you. Basically is bit.ly/Wizard as of 2020. I give you just a pair of minutes since the questions are not too complicated, and we'd like to proceed with this session speaking instead of watching the video. By now, while you are filling this questionnaire, I would like to underline two key issues of what Wolfram and Jaka said. Basically, one is the level 3 CAI level of automation, since there is a problem of real interaction in a very short time between humans and machines. And the other issue of Jaka is basically the cybersecurity, since these machines should be always on, always connected on with the environment. So there's a huge problem about this kind of interaction, as many incidents and hijacking have been done in the past. I don't know if someone has already answered to these questions. Maybe we can skip to the third part, since it seems that Fabro is not connected by now. So let me introduce the other two speakers of this session, which are Cristina Pranello and Franco Stivali. Cristina Pranello is professor at the Politecnico of Torino. She has a very huge experience both in research and in management of transport agencies, and I'm very happy that she's here. While Franco Stivali is the Chief Innovation Officer of Ferrovie dello Stato, which is the main player of public transport in Italy. So I'm very eager to hear what they have to say to us. First of all, I asked them to make a quick introduction of what is their their perspective on this field of research, and so I give the floor to Cristina Pranello. Thank you very much. The floor is yours.
Thank you so much, Federico, and thanks for inviting us to this very interesting session. So as the time is very short, I am going directly to what is, according to me, the point, the key point, the crucial point of all what is related to autonomous vehicle, that is the topic of this session. For me, and I'm trying to speak about the user point of view, and also for me as a researcher, I could say that travel behavior is the key, is the lever, the most important point in the better understanding how and if autonomous vehicle, so how will be perceived, if they will be accepted, and how will be the future scenario according to the reaction of people. So the behavior is the main point. Behavior, what is behavior? An important psychologist defining behavior as the manifest observable response in a given situation with respect to a given target. That is wonderful definition, but we have to, how to say, adapt that to what is the travel behavior. That is what interesting to us to understand, which is the reaction to autonomous vehicle. So travel behaviors is all what is related to complex, because are complex decision-making process of the travelers before the trips, during the trip. Because before you have, and also during, you can change some ideas for sure, but you have to decide where you have to go, so the destination, when you have to depart, which is the mode you want to choose, the route choice. So a lot of decision has to be taken, quite contemporary if you want, because this is immediate. And definitely the behavior, travel behavior is what the people do over space and how people use transport modes. But for me, it's much more. And this is the crucial point that I would like to highlight. What is travel behavior for me is, I try to push a bit the concept, is a state of mind. What does it mean? That is based on psychosocial variables and aspects inside ourselves, and these create our cognitive mechanism. And definitely this is important. Why? Because understanding travel behavior allows to us to understand the levers to move. This means what to do if I want to address in a different way the transport demand to better comply with the transport supply, or definitely today we say to comply with a better sustainability in transport. Second is understand to which extent a potential enforcement is necessary. So this means what can I do to better address this behavior, and how to use the supply to influence the demand. This means that a potential supply in a certain direction or another one for the autonomous vehicle could completely change the scenario of what will happen in terms of implementation of autonomous vehicles. So the human being is in the center, and her behavior are fundamental to understand what will happen in the next future. This is challenging, it's quite difficult.
Now I leave the floor to Franco Stivali. I thank him very much for being here today. Thank you very much, and the floor is yours.
Thank you, Federico, and thanks for the invitation. Good morning to everybody. Speaking from the point of view of a big operator in mobility, autonomous vehicle is a very, very interesting opportunity. And why? You see, when you think to a railways company, you do trips and traveling by train or buses, and you think that we are involved in this kind of activity. But we have in mind some different things. The diffusion of autonomous vehicles means in some way to deal with a large, heterogeneous, interconnected and distributed computing network. Is a systems, and our actual job is not only to sell trips or sell services. Our actual job is to manage complex systems. Every day, to move our almost 8,000 trains, we need to manage a different network, a physical network made by rail and or streets also, but we have to manage also a net of energy, a network of information. All these mix up, not a single things, but all these things together. So we are not developing one, two, or more technologies that will be necessary to have autonomous vehicles. We are a system integrator. And so when we think that this kind of technology all together start to change the shape, the phase of the transport, the phase of mobility, we are able to manage this. We think that it's interesting to follow this evolution, because it means that the transport change deeply and moves from the single activity like train or buses or auto or bicycle or what you want, and move toward a system, to a complex integrator like us. For this is very interesting to follow in this area. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Now I have the first question for you, and it comes with the urgency we are all dealing with, which is the pandemic of COVID-19. I would like to ask you what is your thought, what is your perspective in situations like this, how transport and public transport can tackle such issues, and what is the role of the autonomous vehicles in this. I will give for the first the floor to Cristina and then to Franco. Thank you.
Federico. This is a really interesting question because and so actual because effectively we are living in a strange period. But I tried to answer, but before, how to say, I like some points that, according to me, are important to be considered. If we look what happened, effectively, this crisis, this pandemics, has showed very clearly that sometimes some trips we do are superfluous or they're induced by false needs, we can say. So the fact that we were avoided to move and to travel in any way has induced us to reconsider, if you want, really which trips were mandatory and which other probably could be eliminated. And then another important phenomenon arrived is the teleworking. I call teleworking because since ever we say teleworking, working at home in remote. Now we know that it's fashionable to say smart working because it's smart, or agile work. In Italy, we are speaking about lavoro agile, this agile work that is quite funny to me, this adjective. But what does it mean that given that we had several months of complete change of mind and of way to behave, and this was I thought before the summer break, I said, okay, if after summer break everything is solved, I'm quite sure that quite soon the situation will come back to the normal, not the new normal, but the previous normal. But definitely we have seen that there was a resurgence, there is a resurgence if you want, and if the situation will come back to the very, very heavy period of before summer, I think that we will not go back to the normal very, very soon. And the attitude of people, this is for me the key, will change or not according to the time that this strange period is lasting. So this means that you need a long time to make that the habits are changing. When the habit changes, is much easier to maintain the new habit. Otherwise, it's easy to come back to the previous one. Why this premise? Because, and then I did another reflection, and then I go to the answer. If you think that we already faced a much severe and much worse pandemics than now, that was the Spanish flu during the First World War, what's happened? The situation after that come back to the previous state, and the progress will continue as ever. And this is my thing, that definitely this has been an opportunity to change behavior, but to really change behavior, we need that this situation continue to last for quite a long time. And we hope for sure that this doesn't happen. So definitely, what's happened and how facing the transport mode and traveling in this new normal. For sure, an effect, nevertheless, what I said, that I think that in medium long time we will come back to the previous situation, but now we have a problem with public transport for sure, because people are afraid to use public transport. Public transport to, how to say, become usable, they said, okay, we reduce the capacity, but reduce the capacity put a lot of problems. A lot of problems in terms of cost of sanitation that have increased enormously, but for sure the problem is less revenue because less tickets, because less people, more need of subsidy from the transport authorities. This is a big problem because this means more money from the state, simply speaking. So, which is the alternative? The alternative is not there because the public transport companies are suffering of less revenues, and paradoxically, we need to have more public transport now that the schools are starting again, and to maintain the social distance and the safety and security on board, we need to have more supply, and this costs even more money. This is a really big problem. Otherwise, what we will see, the comeback to the car. And so we could come back to several decades ago when the car was really the king or the queen, and definitely more pollution, more congestion. How is the role of autonomous vehicle in all that? I'm a bit afraid that the role, how to say, could be good and could be bad. Why I'm saying that? Because if we are so good to limit the use of the car and make it public transport, and also I say cycle paths, but safer, we can really decrease congestion and pollution, but we have to intervene, as I said before, in for sure keeping safe the vehicles, to control the crowding and send information to users, say how much the buses or train or trams and metro are crowded, and so say yes, you can board, no, wait for the next one. This is very important. And reserve lanes for public transport are very important, and a change of how to say way to manage a public transport company is important too. So which is the role of autonomous vehicles? For public transport, for me, is what I said before is good, because thanks to autonomous vehicle, public transport can save money, avoiding the use of drivers. And this is a big save of money, because the personnel is about 55% of the cost of the company. So public autonomous vehicle could help a lot. But on the other side, pay attention the bad side, the cars, if in imagining a scenario where everything is autonomous, and so we could own autonomous vehicles, my own car autonomous, this could be a problem, because there is a competition between public transport and car. Being both autonomous, we don't know which will be the reaction in terms of travel behavior and attitudes of people towards these two different ways. If, and this is COVID, that this was the question, has a role, because if we want, in any case, to avoid to being in contact with other people, even an autonomous public transport, even control, even with crowding control and so on, is not said, will be chosen. And so we would come back to the car with all the problems related to that and to completely how to say lack of sustainability. So this is I'm not sure how I have answered to the question properly, but and I hope, because I'm seeing myself freezed.
Yes, I have heard that. Let's hear what Franco Stivali has to say, and then I will come back with a question for both. Please, Franco Stivali, share your view.
Yes. Yes. Thank you. Few minutes only to say that you see, we are sapiens. We are a terrible spy, and we are here on the earth. We have been here for more than 300,000 years, and we know how to phase up with monkeys, tigers, and of course viruses. So there is an error, I think, a basic error, when we think that the normal situation is without COVID or without virus. The normal situation is virus, always. It's strange that there is no problem with virus, because it's normal that we have to face up with this situation. So I think that nothing changed. What I mean when I say nothing changed, that we have some target, that our targets are reduction of cost, increase of efficiency, respect of environment, and all these things. And we try to move in this direction. I speak about the developed world. That means that maybe after the COVID or after the 100 different kind of epidemic or pandemic, what we do exactly always the same things. We try to perform better. That means more security, more disinfection, maybe, an overall quality of life, and in this sense also autonomous vehicles could help because reduce cost and give the opportunity to better organize the transport. Everything that goes in this direction is helpful. And now in this moment, maybe we have to reduce the number of persons on board. And that means, of course, excessive costs. But this is only a period, a short period, a strange period. That no again with the cost, and the public transport has disadvantage. Many people in low spaces, in a few wagons, in few cars, in few vehicles, and this is efficiency. This is a reduction of cost. This is a reduction of pollution. This is a reduction of accident, of many things. We can't change our mind on this item. Not for a virus. No, it's normal. Happens. Things happen, but all this development of our society, including transport, including mobility, this is in the direction of better quality of life. And I believe that we doesn't change. Maybe, yes, a mask for a period, maybe social distance for a period, and then start again. Start again, we step up, because all these things with new technologies, with new ability. The problems could be for other worlds, like third worlds of not developed worlds, where the transport and all the quality of life is depressed. This is maybe the problem. 3 different level of world. But for us, for industrialized country, I don't see so big changes in the future. That may be for a short, but then start again at the step up of technologies, of services. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I will leave my question for the final part. Now I would like to ask both of you another question concerning the governance of public transport, since we are in an autonomous region. And what I'm asking to you, if AVs change something in a framework of national or regional transport system. What is the challenge, or what are the drawbacks in this scenario? And again, I will ask first to Cristina Pronello to answer, and then to Franco Stivali. Thanks.
Thanks, Federico. This is another really interesting question, also quite complicated to answer because it's a complex framework. But I'm starting from a simple how to say, concept, that is intermodality. Intermodality for me is the key coordinating local and national public transport in case on an AV scenario. Also, frankly speaking, now, also in absence of a autonomous vehicle scenario, but even more, this is crucial for an hypothesis of autonomous vehicle scenario. But it's important to define which is the level we are speaking about. I'm trying to imagine the answer to your question in the case of level 5. So we have fully autonomous vehicles. The colleagues before mentioned the 5 levels. So in this case, I imagine a network that has been completely integrated with for the user side, a travel planner that is working in real time, completely multimodal, and allowing to give the information to the users how to go from A to B in the smoothest way, and providing also, for sure, this is mandatory, an integrated payment. So what does it mean? That we would enter in the deployment of ITS, that Intelligent Transport System, or what we name now the CITS, Collaborative Intelligent Transport System, that is really, we can say, the framework of autonomous vehicles. So the context will be multiple data providers, different data formats and protocols, budgetary cuts, this is a constraint, and data security and privacy to guarantee. It is not so trivial. So all these issues are related to how to try to make work in this intermodality and integrating local and national level. So the issues that has to be tackled to set up a real integrated and interoperable approach allowing this integration between local and national in case of autonomous vehicles is data information and collection, data information processing, data information communication, and data information management to provide proper action and policies. That is seems simple, but is much less simple than it seems. So given that, those steps have to be chained. So all of what I mentioned has to be properly chained according to common standard to be interoperable. So this will allow to local authorities to monitor and manage the transport system on all the national and also in the border, so exchanging with other countries, the trips exchanging with other countries, and allows to users to travel benefiting of the integrated networks, we can say without borders. This is much more important if you want in a region as Friuli Venezia Giulia that you mentioned. So thanks to sensor and technology for the communication, we can have definitely massive data collected from all the transport mode, from the vehicles, but also from the infrastructures, both, and also from single users across different actors. Why I'm saying that? Because public transport companies have data from the users, for sure, thanks to their travel planners. Road and highway authorities have data from the infrastructures, but they have also data from the users because, for example, the telepass, if you think about the highways. Then we have the sharing mobility providers for car sharing and bike sharing. They have the data from the users. Then we have the taxi operators that now they also play the game with their hubs. Then we have the automotive industries that in the case, I'm speaking in case of autonomous vehicle for sure also, automotive industries, there will be a big player in collecting data and managing data from the users. Freight operators, the same. The insurances, because these are an important part, even more in case of autonomous vehicles. They own a lot of personal data of the users. The information providers, Google, Amazon, Microsoft, and so on, they are those that have most data in absolute. Telephone operators, the same. And the travelers through their smartphones. So what does it mean? This is really challenging because we need to have or to develop proper analytical tools that allow data fusion to do what? But to reach what we expect to reach. Prevention of accidents, forecast of transport demand, monitoring of traffic, monitoring of performance of transport providers, and definitely all that allow to support decision making, to deliver to travelers accurate and reliable information for door-to-door journeys, and local and national and out of the border, and to realize definitely smart mobility. For that, the ATIS, the Advanced Travel Information System, will be the key, but even more, the MaaS, the Mobility as a Service, as a platform, will be an important player. Why? Because definitely the MaaS, we have no time to go in depth in this concept. MaaS is something very confusing for the most of people, but MaaS include customer needs, tailored solution, interface, and so the platform, integrated payment, business model, service providers, and the MaaS service providers, last point, the MaaS, we don't know who will or who would take care about the MaaS, this platform. This means that we have for sure pros and cons according to who will be the provider of the MaaS, if some public authorities, example transport authorities, or private companies. We have pros and cons. For sure, if public authorities, so transport authorities, I have in mind that transport authorities are the best, we could say, player, could own the MaaS and manage the MaaS, we will have a lot of advantages related to, if you want, the security that our data are in the hands of the state, we can say. But we know that this could be probably slower and a little bit more difficult in terms of bureaucracy and so on. this could be an obstacle, and on the other side, if this will be managed by a private company, the problem is not there, because this is the advantage, if you want, of the private operators. But another point that could be a problem if a private operators could manage the mass is that it's not said the public transport companies that provide the service would be happy to send and disclose their data to a private companies. They would prefer probably the public authority, so the transport authority or the state in general. So it's not so clear effectively what will happen. This is just to say that this integration that you are speaking about is complex now if we're speaking about mass, but it would be much more complex in terms of implementation of autonomous vehicle, but will be mandatory, because imagine a world, but I'm thinking about level 5 of everything is autonomous. Wow, this is complicated. It's complicated because this means a management of data I mentioned before that has to be secure and guarantee to people their privacy. This is one of the crucial points of the autonomous vehicle. We are so many issues, and the colleagues before mentioned that, but for sure, as I'm looking at the travel behavior and the people behavior, perception and attitudes, I see that as a key point. The key point is guarantee privacy to people. Otherwise, then we'll never use autonomous vehicles. And so the problem is not there.
Thank you. It's strange that masks guarantee privacy, but the problem is not the appearance of the passengers, but their data. It's a kind of a paradox. Now I leave the floor to Franco Stivali for his perspective.
Yes, I totally agree with Cristina, and I believe that our duty is to move people, move goods, and it's difficult to have the same condition, the same quality, the same safety when we speak about the move in a local situation or move in a national situation or move from a country to another country. This involves a big part of data, of information. And this is critical because if we want to reach a good level of efficiency in the transport, we need to know many data. We need to know many things, because the people who moves, or the goods, when we move goods, is exactly the same. But when we move from a city to another city, we need intermodality. We don't choose only one mean of transport. Normally we choose 2, 3, 4 different kind of transport, and we choose this different kind of efficiency is the start of efficiency is the information. And who owns the data? Is a company, is a state, is a third part? It's difficult to say. Nowadays it's difficult because we have to integrate different groups of transport. And Italy is a very good challenge, because we haven't big cities. We have not cities of 20 million of people. We have 2 or 3 nodes, very important. And then we have a lot of different stations. And we have to connect all these. And if we think to autonomous vehicle, that means to have a complication of the situation, but it's unavoidable. This brings us to a better system of transport. And better means more efficiency, less cost, and most important, less pollution, respect for the environment, stability. All these things go through a connection between our duty, our activity is connection. To be connected means also to give opportunity trips. And when I decide to go from Rome to Milan, I have to choose. I need the opportunity to choose different solutions. And these different solutions are made of means of transport, but also of information on if I go by train or by plane or by car. And all this could only increase if increase in terms of technologies like autonomous vehicles. So I believe that transport companies have to choose an agreement and a solution with the state or the public or the regulator of the system, because we need both. We need efficiency and speedy in transport. Is the same language in some way if I move in Milan or in Berlin or in London or everywhere in Europe, minimal Europe, I have to find the same situation, easy to choose, easy to move. But that means some decision on data, on regulation, on safety. And more I increase the technology, and more I need to move on this kind of situation to solve this
The connection is scattering, so
problem.
thank you. You spoke about cities, and that begs another question, which relates to the topic of this ESOF event, which is smart cities. What is your perspective on the role of AVs and public transport in smart cities? I'm very curious to hear this from your voice. If Christina can start to answering this question, please. Thanks.
Thanks, Federico. The smart city, so a buzzword. We know big data, smart cities, mass mobility as a service are becoming already our buzzword, and now also smart working is the last addition. But smart city is evolved so many times, and even more in case of autonomous vehicle, this could become quite interesting to imagine. So what I imagine how would be the smart city with the implementation of autonomous vehicles is that, and I start with a criticism, is that it is not said people will be so enthusiastic about automation. So in a city where autonomous vehicle will be there, we don't know how much people will be so happy to have only available autonomous vehicle, and probably this will not happen. We will have a sort of mix. And I think that in this smart city with autonomous vehicle, restricting the circulation is one of the actions that will probably happen. Because urban environments will be the areas where the restriction will take place because it's complicated to manage the circulation of different typologies of autonomous vehicle in the same territory. And it's for that I see much more complicated in the cities, why I see much more interesting automation and autonomous vehicle in the lower density areas, where if you want to avoid the use of own car, a service given through autonomous vehicle could be interesting and less expensive than implement autonomous vehicles in cities where there is a lot of traffic. And again, the problem is we will be in level 5, all the vehicles autonomous, or we will be in a transition phase where we will have a mix. This is another challenging point in terms of the smart city of the future, because we don't know in which phase we will be and when, and if yes, when we will arrive to the level 5. So it's for that I said there is a lot of traffic and manage different typologies of autonomous vehicle with even more normal vehicles could be a real mess, and this really will restrict a lot the use of the space, and we will have mandatory reserve lanes for fully autonomous vehicles, for sure. But it's much more simple if we think about public transport, because for me, the biggest and earliest migration application to automation is probably related to public transport. I see less potential sense to automated personal cars. Because public transport, as I said before, you can save a lot of cost in terms, a lot of money in terms of personal cost. And for sure, they could have the bad side of the coin that public transport driver jobs could decrease, but they could be converted in other typology of jobs for sure. But other typology of transport mode in a smart city with autonomous vehicle is related to taxi and robotaxi. So for taxi, I think that the social contact with the driver and talking with the driver or feeling safe and secure because there is a driver is an important point. And so I'm expecting the taxi driver could remain a bit more common than autonomous or robotaxi, because I say probably, this is my feeling, people could like to continue to have an exchange with a human being. And this goes to the point of the attitudes. As I said at the very beginning, attitudes are very important. And in my researches, I discovered that travel pleasure and pleasure of driving or using also my bike or public transport, if I like it, is a very important point in the decision of the users. And so if there is a certain pleasure in, for example, using the car, it's quite difficult that those people abandon the car as driver for an autonomous vehicle. So understanding the attitudes is very important to understand how this smart city will be in terms of implementation of autonomous vehicles. And again, the other point that was also mentioned before, the feelings and perception of safety, of sharing our data. So it's important to understand in this smart city how will be managed by whom will be managed these autonomous services when it's not your own autonomous car. If again, coming back to, how to say, the point of this smart city, I see that for safety reasons, but not only, it's important to have IoT, Internet of Things, and related equipment for communication, vehicle, road infrastructure, and so on. That will be a big expenses for the cities. And the problems will occur for sure if not all the vehicles are autonomous. As I said before, I'm continuing to come back to that because it's really not clear what will be. And I doubt that we will be in a complete scenario completely autonomous. So the mix or the mixity, as the French says, could be a big problem. And again, I'm repeating what I said before, the reserve lanes will be something mandatory to manage this complex situation. And then there is another point, that is regulation. Regulation is needed to define how to implement autonomous public transport in the urban context. This means more space devoted to public transport and also to the soft modes for sure, less space to the cars. And this means that the modal shift and the modal share will be very important, because according to that, so intervening on the supply, you can really readdress the demand. Because if you say, hey guys, all the spaces for public transport and pedestrian, no more space for cars, okay, no cars will be there, because this means that autonomous cars will not be useful at all. But this is definitely a political decision. So regulations are very important and needs to be strict if we want to avoid an excessive use of cars, and we want really to use autonomous vehicle mainly for public transport. This is my hope, personally, frankly speaking, because I would like to see a smart city worthy to this name that is more public transport oriented and much less car oriented. But, and the last point I would share with you is, but what about the so-called shared mobility and the ride hailing, Uber, just to mention something that is well known to everyone? For sure, the market in the autonomous vehicle era could be different from the current one. And about the competition among the modes, I see the real problem, because I said the competition between my private car and the public transport, but I've not mentioned yet the car sharing, for example, or the ride hailing as Uber. And it's important to know that Uber did an important agreement with Toyota Motor Corporation to collaborate with an aim at advancing and bringing to market autonomous ride sharing as a mobility service. And Toyota invested $500 million in Uber. This happened in August 2018. So this make me reflecting about what does it mean in terms of services in this smart city, the services of autonomous mobility in this smart city. So it's really complicated because public transport on one side, the shared mobility that is autonomous, the ride hailing that is autonomous. And so for Uber, this means save money. As for public transport means save money. All that living together will be not so simple if the restriction and the regulation I mentioned just before will not put in action in a very strict way. So I'm stopping here because I suppose I use all the time. If there will be the time after, you will let me know. I can enter a bit in detail of what could happen, because I did a survey about that. What could happen to people and so to their behavior, travel behavior, if the current situation will not change in terms of public transport and autonomous vehicle will appear. There is a danger where there is a threat, but I'm stopping here because I suppose I've already largely used my time.
Thank you very much. Now I would like to hear what Franco Stivali has to say about that.
Yes, thank you, Federico. Sorry if I go back for a while to the virus. Think what's happened in Europe during the about 1,300, when all the people go away from cities because the cities are dangerous and they need to stay in the fields to survive. At the time, maybe we could consider that never more cities, because the virus and so on, the pandemic that destroyed enough million of people, but the cities survived. Why? Because cities are a good idea. Cities are a very, very good idea. They are intrinsic advantage. First of all, cities are a node of different network. In cities, we have a concentration of transport, concentration of energy, of information, and this is very efficient. So cities are smart by definition. When I heard smart cities, I think, okay, all the cities are smart because the idea of city is smart. When we speak about smart cities in the way that normally we use, we refer to the increase of the intelligence, intrinsic intelligence of the city. One of these is regarding the transport, the mobility. And in the city is very, very hard because we have a lot of people moving in a short spaces and they need to change continually the mean of transport. Moving from, they go on foot, on bicycle, on car, and on subway, and they have to take plane or to take train or to take maybe also a ship. And so the mobility in the city is very, very interesting because increase the problem in terms of organization of the transport, in terms of the possibility to choose different means, in terms of environment. Well, autonomous vehicles is one of the solutions, the possible solution, maybe not all things autonomous, but an increase of autonomous could be helpful because, first of all, of course, a reduction of costs and a reduction of accidents, but is also the big opportunity to have a better programming of the transport. Now, to give to people the opportunity to move from point to point in the city. City means also large area of inhabitants, and they can move from one point to another one, choosing the best solution. And the best solution is made also because I don't need a driver. I have a means of transport already organized to move from here to there. And so, of course, this also includes a big change of consideration, moving from the private car to a shared car, maybe. Move to the single vehicles to a public transport. And autonomous vehicle with is connected, but I believe that the cities maybe are the first part where it's possible to have an experiment in public transport with autonomous vehicles. Not single, but maybe buses or a tram or a subway. Subway we already have no? Where it's possible, you see, in a subway it's possible to have autonomous vehicles. They are without driver. And also in airport, where it's possible, we adopt this solution, and people is not worried. When you go in subway without driver, there is nobody hurried because, oh my God, there is no driver. They are safe.
Thank you very
they are
much,
quiet.
Franco. Excuse me if I
Okay,
interrupt you. Thank you very much. I would
No,
like
no,
to
that's
start
good.
from
Thank you.
these last remarks in answering the questions that that have been received from the public. One specifically goes to the regulation, challenging the possibility in itself to provide a regulation in AV public transport, basically for the lack of flexibility and the problem of costs. What do you think about that? Is it feasible, really regulation and the sustainability of public transport with AVs, given the circumstances? This is a question that I offer to every speaker present here. Unfortunately, Franco Steibel couldn't attend due to connection problems, so we had to manage the schedule of this session. But I will start from you, Franco. What do you think about that?
You touch a very sensible point, because you know, I am responsible for innovation. Innovation is the best enemy of the rules. Every time you have a new things, the rules fall down. And so I am an enemy of the rules, but I understand that is as a will. Now you need to have rules and regulation, because this is comfortable for the people that use the innovation. And so I think that it's not only possible, but it's mandatory to have this kind of solution, to have new rules. The problem is the speedy. Innovation go very, very fast now. After with the new kind of things, digital revolution and so on, the speed is increased and the regulator goes slowly. That could be a risk, because to have new things, new opportunity, new market, new solution, but without rules, without organization behind this, is dangerous. So the solution, okay, I believe, is that the government, the state who make rules must go very, very speedy, not so slowly.
I don't know if Christina has something to jump in.
Yes, but the regulation, because it was not completely clear what was how to say asking, because the regulation is a large field, we can say. But the regulation is related to, for example, how to regulate the use and implementation of AVs for public transport on one side, for autonomous cars on the other side. This is very different regulation. But I see a regulation from the city in terms of how to use the space, the public space, the roads, how to reconsider the use of the roads, the width of the roads and so on, and what to devote to whom. This is very important. So without regulation, nothing can happen, because otherwise there is a chaos. This for sure. The other regulation is related to how to manage, speaking now about public transport, how to manage, how to say, yes, also the data, because in this scenario, a lot of data, a massive quantity of data will be exchanged between the providers of the service and also the infrastructure and the user. And if you don't regulate that, exactly as the GDPR did for the personal data is the same, will be again a mess. And the risk is that people will prevent to use any kind of autonomous vehicle, because they will have not any confidence in losing their data or giving their data to whom they don't know. They don't know in which way their data are used, even though I have to say there is a big contradiction. Now this is already happening, because with Google, Amazon, the big players, the big companies that own our data, Facebook even more, that own our data, it's strange that people are not aware enough and are not worried at all about their data, but they are starting to be worried about the data in case of autonomous vehicle.
Yes,
This is big
it's
contradiction.
strange. Yes. I have a question, quick question for Jaka and Wolfram, received from the participants. What is the case if an AV is, or a passenger, could be everyone? So could AVs increase driving because everyone, for example, at 10 years old, could be put in the car and drive on his own? What do you think about this scenario? Will traffic really increase or not?
So, would you like me to start, Federico?
Yes, a quick answer. We have 5 minutes.
Yes, of course. So I think in general, one of the major opportunities of autonomous vehicles is to extend this possibility of mobility. So basically with these cars, I think not just not young people, but mainly also elderly people, people with disabilities, so they will be able to drive in these cases. But if we talk about a young person, for example, there is still a big also challenge in the question of how these vehicles will be put to the road. So there will need to be some kind of a driving license also for autonomous car to be let on the street. And of course, also the same goes with the supervisor if we talk about the person that's using this car. So this will also need to be regulated just as other parts. But I doubt that children will be able to use this technology on their own without the supervision of an elderly and more experienced driver, and also maybe a tele-remote assistance.
Thank you. Wolfram, would you jump on it?
Yeah, okay, can do. I agree with Jaka regarding that. I think if we're looking into the far future when such systems will be available and tested and properly implemented, they will give a lot of opportunities for new ways and forms of mobility. But it's not only a question about is it okay to put your children into such a vehicle? It's rather a question about do you want to have your children being unguided wherever you want? So the vehicles, if it's just a question about the mobility, that's one thing. But the other thing still remains that who takes the responsibility for the children wherever they are. So it's not, the vehicles will not be able to play the nanny for the children. So just to mention it that way. Maybe just one word to the previous question regarding the regulation and the speed of regulation. I think it's important to mention here that we might need to distinguish between, on one side, the real use of these vehicles and how to treat them and deal with them once they are available. And on the other side, I think it's important to mention that we need also regulations for testing, because as long as the vehicles are not implemented and working properly and everything is running smoothly, we will need to have testing, not only on closed tracks, but also some tests will need to be running on public roads. And for that, such tests, proper regulations are necessary, because at the end, both sides, the standard use, but also the testing, need to follow the goal that safety first. Nobody wants to have accidents, and therefore we need regulations, but they need to be also opened up to enable the learning, which is the aim for testing.
Thank you very much. I would end it with some final conclusions. I would like to thank the participants who are here, of course, the speakers, the organization of ESOF and the support team. Thank you very much. The Coast Association, the University of Udine, And I would like to say also, if you're interested in the WiseAct activity, you can write to the chair and make contact with him. I would like also to say that if you are interested in participating in our survey, you can write to me and I will guide you to the link to fill it. I think that this session has shown how the experience of traveling will change, not only because of the masks we have to wear now and maybe we don't know for how much time more, but also due to the technologies that are involved in autonomous vehicles. There is a lot of uncertainty, as you have heard, from the mixed traffic, autonomous, automated pedestrians, bikes, and so on. And of course, there is a problem regarding the regulation, and this is why in many countries and also in Italy, there are regulatory sandboxes for autonomous vehicles, and this is an interesting perspective also for us as a layman, as I am. I would like to thank you very much. There are 30 seconds more to be together, but I think that we can close it now. Thank you very much and have a good lunch.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Bye.